Seems like every now and then on the forum we have the question about mid-body hands versus impact hands or forward hands or impact fix hands or whatever you want to call them. But basically setting up either with your hands at impact or setting up with your hands what we like to call mid-body. What's the advantages? What's the disadvantages? And what happens to this club face at address? Does it have to be lined up in any particular place? Here's how it works. First of all, at impact, you can see what a straight shaft would look like on my blue board right here. You want this forward lean so that the club is up this left arm right here at impact, flat left wrist, bent right wrist. Club face a little bit open at impact. That's impact alignment. Also, I have my body in really good impact alignment. Some people choose to start from impact. Some people choose to start from, like Jack Nicklaus did, with their body at address and their hands very similar to impact. There's all kind of theories of why this might be better. I've been teaching for 25 years and I don't let but maybe 2% of my golfers do it. It just, to me, the baseball players hit their hands mid-body, then they're hitting the hands mid-body when they hit the baseball. I don't think there's any particular mechanical advantage. I know you'll get all the golf machine book literalists will come out of the woodwork and say, oh, how do you say that structure and all? I'm not a big fan of this because I've helped so many people over the years learning a lagging club head takeaway. We'll do a search for that on the forum. We're not going to interject that into all this other stuff with mid-body hands. But anyway, okay, let's say you started with your hands at impact and your club at impact. Should your club be square? Not really. I mean, if you're trying to actually put your hands and your arms in impact for a normal shot where the club face is a little open when it hits the ball, and by the time it mashes the ball and the face leaves, the face is square, a theoretical straight shot, while the club is tracing a straight plane line on a plane. Seems to me you'd have the club a little open at address. Jack Nicklaus, who actually set up with his hands and arms sort of at impact and his body squared away, not comparatively squared away, normal, squared away at address, just did an article for Golf Digest a month or so ago that said, hey, I set up with the club open. Most tour players like drivers that look really open. There's a good reason for it. You need the club face to be open when you hit it. So let's start with that. So the guys who actually want to set up at impact, they should have the club face a little bit open. Well, what about the guys who set up with their hands mid-body? Well, if forward-leaning shaft will produce an open face if it's vertical to the ground, I mean those lines on the face are straight up to the ground. That's vertical to the ground, that's open when my hands are forward, impact-like. Then if my hands are backward, where the butt of the club is more at the belt buckle, then it stands to reason to me that the club face should be closed. If you don't manipulate, if you don't do anything else. You say, oh, it's closed, how can you line up? Give me a break. Do I look like I'm lined up 90 degrees to this camera? Do I look like I'm lined up 90 degrees? And I'm doing it with the shaft. There's no club head there. You know that this looks relatively square, and this looks relatively closed, this looks relatively open. Doesn't have anything to do with this club face. The only thing that matters is the club face relationship to this left hand in your hands at address, also at the top, and at impact, what kind of, club face rotation you're using. It has nothing to do, really, with what the club face looks like at address. So, lots of people, I would say most good players, when they have their hands mid-body, do not have the club face vertical, which would have the face closed, but they then turn their hands to the right until the face looks a certain degree of square or even maybe open that they visually prefer. But let me just say this, it's the same grip. They gripped it already, and I don't give a darn what you do with the club down here. It's still the same way in their hands. So that's why a lot of people on TV, depending on how far forward the ball position is, look like their hands are really, really strong, when that's a neutral grip as you'll ever see right there. So if you want to have the club face vertical to the ground, because I think it's a little more precise, the face should be closed at this position. It should be open at impact, impact fix, or some crazy combination of impact hands and address body like Jack Nicklaus, the greatest player of all time, did. when the heck does the sucker get square? Well, it gets square at separation, when that ball leaves right there. That's when it squares up. Lots of times maybe when the shaft is vertical, but most of the time because the sweet spot is behind the sweet spot of this club is this way of the center line of the shaft. There's a little hook face involved and the shaft is kicking forward, and it usually squares up before the club gets the vertical to the ground. I hope this clears some things up. Now, let's talk about some advantages of doing it both ways. Well, back when hickory was the shaft of choice, everybody had a lagging club head takeaway. Everybody did. Just like every fisherman still has a lagging club head takeaway. Lots of people get helped by that. You might want to try it. We've done videos on it in the past. And like I said, you can do a search. There are people that feel like, well, their hands are already set right here. They can just keep their hands set. It didn't hurt Jack Nicklaus. Although you may want to watch, Jack Nicklaus started with this butt of the club up his underarm. But by the time his hands were right here, the butt of the club was in the middle of the body. I've said this in videos and posts before, but I just want you to realize that the most famous forward hand golfer of all time undid his forward hands a little bit in the backswing. Either way, get your grip right. Choose your position. You're going to get a vote right here from Brian Manzella and the Brian Manzella Golf Academy for mid-body hands, everything mid-body at address, and impact hands and impact body at impact. Try them both. Make the club face look like anything you're comfortable with, and we'll see you on the field.